Hey folks, it's Brett. Gonna talk a little bit real quickly here about drones in the wintertime. So you can fly drones in the wintertime as long as you follow some basic rules. There's always some risk involved, but we'll go through a few things that I do just to give you drone enthusiasts out there a little bit of a leg up. I have flown in temperatures as low as 15 below zero and had very little trouble, but I have had some trouble, and I've learned from those circumstances. So I'm going to give you some advice here. First of all, have a landing pad. A landing pad is pretty important. You can get away without it, but it's not much fun. It just makes things a lot easier to protect the aircraft from getting moisture from the ground when the rotors spin up. Those ice crystals and things can get up into your air vents and your camera gimbal and your optics and your electronics, and that's bad. So it's not going to eliminate the risk, but it's going to mitigate it. So a pop-up landing pad is a good thing to have. I try to keep one around. If I don't have one, I'll hand launch my drone, launch it from my hands so it's not touching the ground when it takes off. Second thing is you want to have a nice place to keep it dry and warm. I have a hard-sided Pelican case that I use, but when I don't have one of those available, then I'll use my my soft case that DJI provided me with. So, for instance, I've got my aircraft here. Depending on the time of day and the conditions you're flying in, lots and lots of different configurations that you can use. One of the first things I have in the daytime is I have a neutral density filter. It is a clip-on object that goes on the front of my camera. Most well-known brands will have them, and it's these are made by Polar Pro. There are lots of other fly-by-night companies that make them. Some are okay, some are crap, but it's just basically sunglasses for your aircraft. So you can see the bright sun reflecting off the snow. I put the filter over it and it diffuses some of that. It changes based on the position. So I always keep those handy. I don't use them when I'm doing nighttime stuff, but I do during the day. This one's a polarized ND18 filter, so it puts it down a few stops, lets less light in, and it also kicks up the saturation. So you have to adjust your saturation when you're flying to get a little bit better photos that are more true to life. You can do some of that in post-production editing, but it makes it a lot easier. The sky, especially where it contrasts with the ground and with snow and reflecting light, it makes it a lot easier to edit later. The most important part of flying in cold weather is your battery. Battery needs to be warm before you launch. Some of the drones won't even take off if the battery's cold. It'll just sit there and go, what are you doing? So I keep them in an inside pocket close to my body and keep them warm. If I'm going to be out and about on an ATV or goofing around in the woods or whatever, then I keep some of these hand warmers, and I'll put the battery in a sock and put the battery deep down in the sock, or two batteries. I'll open up a couple of these hand warmers and I will stick them on the outside and roll it up so that these aren't directly touching the battery. There's a layer of sock between them. Just keeps them warm. And it's critical that your batteries are warm before you launch. The aircraft will not behave properly. You could even have a crash or a failure if the battery isn't warm. So always keep some of these with you in the wintertime. Neutral density filters for different light conditions. I have a package of these, and I have a lens cloth to wipe things off with. The other thing is underneath your drone, okay? You've got the gimbal stabilizer and all these joints right here. Moisture can get into those. Just being in your car, going into your house, coming back out, moisture can get in here. I've had this freeze with just moisture from the air freeze up. So what I carry is a little Nalgene bottle, and a syringe that I picked up at Walgreens Pharmacy. And I have a little Nalgene bottle with 91% isopropyl alcohol in it. And all I do is I draw some of this up into the syringe, and it takes different amounts depending on what you're doing. And I will just lightly inject a tiny bit of alcohol into all these little pivot points on my gimbal. The alcohol isn't going to harm that at all. And then I rotate them around a little bit through their range of motion. The other thing I do, especially if there's mist or fog or ice in the air, any moisture, your propellers will freeze up just like an aircraft, just an airplane. They'll freeze up and you'll lose lift and you can crash. So before I launch, I run a little bit of alcohol with my syringe along the leading edges of all my propellers before I launch. And that just reduces the chances of them icing up quickly. I mean, they're still going to at some point, but just running some alcohol across that helps quite a bit. The other thing is, when I'm done and I'm finished with my flight, I bring the aircraft back, I turn it off, and I let it get back to ambient temperature in the house before I open anything up, like the memory card box or anything like that. So there you have it. There's a few tips from Brett to give you an idea of what some of the things you should be doing in the wintertime. Key things are keeping that battery warm before you launch, and having a little bit of kit with you, like a landing pad, and different things with you like alcohol to mitigate risk. All right, guys, there you have it.